many, Muhammad Ali is the greatest of all time, both in the ring as a 3-time heavyweight champion and as a global icon who used his fame to fight for social justice and peace. But he was also a lover of cars, with an eclectic collection that ranged from a bejeweled Mercedes said to be a royal gift to an Elvis-inspired Stutz he drove across the country. Ali once said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life." And in 1986, he took one of his boldest risks yet by venturing to Brazil. Known for its beauty, innovation, and abundant resources, Brazil had long enticed dreamers, including Henry Ford, who sought to harness the Amazon's potential for rubber production through his ill-fated Fordlândia project. But Ali wasn't deterred, and partnered with the Brazilian automaker Puma in hopes of building the ultimate luxury sports car. What followed was a bizarre saga of shady deals with a notorious businessman tied to Saddam Hussein, a crooked lawyer who tried to pour acid on a judge, a car nicknamed the Lettuce, and much, much more. This is the story of fame and folly, of luxury and lunacy, and of rubber and ruin. This is the story of Muhammad Ali's car company, Fordlândia, and the fake prince. This story follows world champions and multi-millionaires, some who appeared to have it all, and others who made some pretty poor decisions. While these are extreme examples, even brilliant people need advice from an outside perspective at times. That's something we could all use in our own personal lives too, someone unbiased to help us navigate complex decisions. We all wrestle with our own struggles, and that's where today's paid partner, BetterHelp, comes in. Whether you're struggling with relationships, career decisions, self-improvement, or just trying to make sense of life, BetterHelp connects you with a credentialed therapist trained to help you find real answers. Instead of getting stuck overthinking, you can talk things through with someone who knows how to help, and you can do it entirely online, through video, phone, or even text-based sessions, whatever works best for you. Just take a quick questionnaire, get matched with a therapist, and if it's not the right fit, switching is simple and free. It's designed to be as convenient and flexible as possible, so you can focus on making progress instead of stressing about scheduling. With over 8,000 reviews and a 4.4-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. To learn more, click on the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/huntersmoon for 10% off your first month. Thank you to BetterHelp for supporting the channel, and now we'll get back to the video. The Ford Model T was revolutionary, not just as a car, but as a breakthrough in industrial efficiency. It was the first mass-produced automobile assembled in factories around the world, including one in Sao Paulo, Brazil. These facilities were marvels of their time, capable of producing a car in just an hour and a half. This remarkable output resulted in over 15 million Model Ts being built during its 19 years on the market. Henry Ford, obsessed with streamlining production, famously declared that customers could have any color you want, so long as it's black, simply because black paint dried faster, allowing him to make even more cars. Ford paid his employees well to attract the best talent, but he also imposed many of his unusual beliefs on them. He established the sociological department, which employed invasive methods to monitor workers, even checking their homes to ensure they weren't drinking or that their wives didn't have jobs. He encouraged square dancing as a wholesome pastime, condemning jazz as degenerate, and had other peculiar obsessions, like his hatred for cattle and his passion for soybeans. Ford even developed a prototype car made from soy in 1941, which he proclaimed as the future of the auto industry. Ford's desire for control extended to his supply chain. Rather than buying rubber for his tires, he decided to produce it himself in the Amazon. Brazil and its neighboring countries had once dominated the rubber trade, but in 1876, Henry Wickham smuggled 70,000 rubber tree seeds to London. From there, the British sent seedlings to their colonies in Southeast Asia, where, free from natural pests, the plants thrived. This shift devastated Brazil's rubber towns, and in a desperate attempt to reclaim their place in the trade, the Brazilian government offered Henry Ford 2.5 million acres of land in the Amazon, along with the incentive of no export taxes on his rubber. Ford accepted the offer, and in 1928 launched Fordlândia, a utopian version of a self-sufficient American-style town in the jungle. However, it wasn't long before the cracks began to show. The site was far from major waterways, making supply shipments a logistical nightmare. The terrain was poorly suited for large-scale farming, and Ford's managers ignored local agronomists, planting trees too closely together, creating the perfect condition for pests to thrive. Ford's management team, mostly Americans who didn't speak Portuguese, imposed their way of life on the Brazilian workers, replacing traditional thatch roofs with heat-trapping metal ones, swapping hammocks for beds, replacing local food with canned goods, and even enforcing square dancing as recreation. Resentment boiled over in 1930, culminating in riots where workers destroyed property and chased Ford executives out of town. Still, Ford doubled down, hiring new leadership, including the infamously strict Archibald Johnston, nicknamed the White Tiger. He also brought in agricultural experts, who suggested moving the operation to a more favorable site and utilizing new rubber tree strains from Asia. The new operation was starting to show promise, but by the end of World War II, synthetic rubber had overtaken natural rubber in demand. Fordlândia was sold off in 1945, and the land ultimately became home to the cows Ford despised so much. Despite Fordlândia's failure, Brazil's automotive industry was beginning to take off. The government restricted imports through high tariffs and outright bans, giving domestic companies room to grow. Brazilian automakers embrace innovation, becoming early adopters of fiberglass for car bodies and leaders in the use of sugarcane-based ethanol fuel. They even ventured into electric vehicles, releasing Latin America's first, the Gurgel Itaipu. Gurgel began taking VW chassis and engines and pairing them with unique bodies, first crafted from fiberglass and later from their patented Plasteel, a composite of fiberglass and steel. The company produced a variety of fascinating vehicles, like the X15 with an asymmetrical split windshield, the Moto Machine with acrylic doors, and the BR880, the first car ever fully manufactured and designed in Brazil. The car was popular and cheap, except to buy one, you had to spend around the value of the car again to first buy 750 Gurgel shares. Beyond Gurgel, Brazil's automotive scene was teeming with creativity. The Brsinca 4200 GT was Brazil's first true sports car and could reach an impressive 200 km an hour. The Santa Matilda, a hand-assembled luxury coupe, was synonymous with exclusivity, with its eccentric owner reportedly destroying parts he deemed imperfect. The Bianco S turned heads with its wild fiberglass design, though its modest 65 horsepower engine and awkward ergonomics limited its appeal. There was also the Miura, not the Lamborghini Miura, but the company Miura, which produced the MTS. And then there was the Renha Formigao, which kinda looks like a Cybertruck from nearly 50 years ago. Brazil's restrictive import policies also attracted foreign automakers to set up local factories to bypass tariffs. Often, they'd build cars catered specifically for the market, like the VW Brasilia and the SP2, a sleek sports coupe many wish had made it to other parts of the world. Chevrolet made their mark with the Opala, Fiat with the 147, Ford with the Corcel, and Willys with the Interlagos, as they had attained the license from Renault to build what was essentially an Alpine A108. The diversity of vehicles emerging from Brazil during this time was remarkable. However, the most internationally successful Brazilian automaker, by far, was Puma. Gennaro Rino Malzoni was born in Italy before emigrating to Brazil when he was 5 years old, settling on a coffee farm in the countryside of Sao Paulo. Though he trained as a lawyer, his legal career was short-lived, and instead he found himself building custom cars in his uncle's repair shop. He made a wide range of projects, from modifying the bodies of Lancias and Austins to swapping a Ferrari drivetrain into a Maserati. His projects began eating up all of the shop's room, so he was forced to build his own shop on the family farm in Matau. Here, with the help from a few employees, the Malzoni GT was born. The car was built on the platform of a DKW, which was one of the 4 companies that made up Auto Union, the German conglomerate that would later evolve into Audi. The engine was a tiny 2-stroke 3-cylinder with just under 1 liter of displacement. However, despite the lack of power, Malzoni still wanted to race the car, and made a second prototype with an improved chassis. To test drive the car, Mario Cesar de Camargo Filho, better known as Marinho, was brought in. He immediately saw potential, bought one for himself, and guided Malzoni to make further improvements. Marinho brought his car to DKW Vamag, the Brazilian branch of DKW, and let them try it out for a few races. They were also impressed, and commissioned 3 for themselves, requesting fiberglass bodies to make them even lighter. The cars were incredibly successful, especially with the race-tuned 1.1-liter engine, and won around a third of the races they entered, often beating up on Alfa GTAs and Ferrari GTOs. Many consider this the golden era of Brazilian racing, with drivers like Emerson Fittipaldi long before his days as an F1 champion, holding his own in the nimble Malzoni against monstrous 7-liter Corvettes. Reno wanted to start selling cars to the public, and with the help of Mourinho, Luiz Roberto Alves da Costa, and Milton Mastigan, they formed the Lumimari Company, an acronym using the first 2 letters of each of their names. They only made 40-something cars, but they were well loved and encouraged Reno to further improve on the vehicle and rebrand Lumimari to Puma. The new car was called the Puma GT and saw immediate success, even winning an award for Brazil's most beautiful car after being judged by a panel which included Nuccio Bertoni himself. They quickly sold well over 100 cars, but then they were hit with devastating news. Volkswagen had bought Auto Union, which included DKW and DKW Bemeg. They didn't want to produce the DKWs used to build the Puma anymore, so Reno was forced to find a new chassis and engine. Luckily, he'd already been playing around with a new chassis, and decided to take a massive leap, swapping from the front engine, front-wheel drive DKW base to a rear engine, rear-wheel drive setup built from the bones of a Karmann Ghia. It took around 9 months of uncertainty, but the new Puma GT really took off, and nearly 24,000 cars were sold around the world. While the Puma sold well internationally, Brazil still had high taxes on foreign vehicles, which made it hard for locals to get American muscle cars. Reno saw this as an opportunity and built the Puma GTB, this time on the chassis of a Chevy Opala. Reno had become commercially successful, all while working on a variety of side projects, like the Anka, the GT4R, and the Carcara, which Mourinho called an electric chair and refused to drive, although it eventually cracked the Brazilian speed record, again with just a 1.1-liter DKW engine. Unfortunately, in 1974, Reno faced heart problems and was pushed out of Puma. He continued to build cars, like the Passat Malzoni, but before the car was sold to the public, Reno passed away in 1979. Puma would continue without Reno, releasing various iterations of the GT and other vehicles. However, they weren't able to reach the same level of success, and in 1985, they ended up selling to Araucaria Vehicle Industries. But they also struggled to turn a profit, and so they decided to turn to none other than Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was born as Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky. At age 12, he had his bike stolen and told a police officer that he wanted to whoop the thief. The officer happened to be a boxing trainer and told him he'd better start learning to fight then. Through hard work and natural ability, he picked it up quickly, and at age 18, he reluctantly got on a plane to Rome for the Olympics, although he packed a parachute just in case something happened on the flight. Ali ended up winning gold, going pro, and when he got his first big paycheck, he put it towards a car, although not for himself. Inspired by Elvis Presley, who had bought an iconic pink 1955 Cadillac for his mom, Ali also bought a pink Cadillac for his mother, a 1959 Eldorado. Soon after, he bought a Cadillac for himself, with the first ever in-car music player, although the small vinyl records could only play a 4-minute song before they had to be swapped out. Ali's managers gifted him yet another Cadillac too, this one 18.5 feet long. In 1964, Ali, still known as Cassius Clay at the time, was pitted against the heavyweight champion of the world, Sonny Liston. Liston was on a different level, and betting odds favored him 8-1 over the 22-year-old Ali, who had never faced anyone of this caliber before. But everything changed that night.
On my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest king of the world. Hold it. You're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world.
Soon after becoming heavyweight champion, Cassius Clay announced his membership in the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Cassius X before being given the name Muhammad Ali. The change was polarizing, and many refused to call him by his new name. Tensions escalated further still when he refused to be drafted into the Vietnam War. As a result, he was stripped of his title and banned from boxing for nearly 4 years. By the time he won his appeal, Ali had missed his prime years of boxing. but he eventually reclaimed his title in one of sport's biggest upsets, defeating George Foreman in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle. After the fight, he considered retiring but ultimately fought on for much longer, becoming the first ever 3-time heavyweight champion and treating himself and his family to various cars along the way. He once went to buy his wife a Mercedes SL, but when the dealer didn't have one, he picked up a manual Alfa Romeo Spider instead, which she couldn't drive. He bought a couple Rolls Royces, including one with a plaque that read, "I am the greatest," along with a Stutz Blackhawk, again inspired by Elvis, who had bought the first one ever sold. He once took this car all the way from Chicago to LA, stopping many times along the way to entertain fans, as the water pump kept failing. He also owned a Cartier Edition Lincoln, which later featured in The Lincoln Lawyer, True Blood, and Sons of Anarchy. Ali starred in films too, including The Greatest, where he played himself. To promote the film, he had a custom Oldsmobile Toronado with the hood ornament sculpted in his likeness. One of the most impressive cars in his collection was a bejeweled 1959 Mercedes, known as the Golden Angel Wing. The car was rumored to be a gift from a royal family member and had been covered in 23-karat gold and valuable jewels worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Another car with some mystery behind it is the Claymobile, said to be specially built for him, except it was built on a 1965 Corvair, and Ali had already given up the name Clay in 1964, so it seems unlikely he would have accepted the car. Regardless, the Claymobile became dilapidated over time, and in 2009 it was stolen and hasn't been seen since. Ali had grown accustomed to his extravagant lifestyle and was still a fierce competitor, which made it hard for him to step away from the ring. As a result, he boxed well past his prime and suffered some brutal losses which likely contributed to health concerns he faced later in life, including Parkinson's disease. Unlike his past opponent and friend, George Foreman, Ali hadn't leveraged his name to make a ton of money, and instead found himself in some unusual business ventures later in life, including his deal with Puma. Ali was well-loved, charismatic, and fiercely loyal. However, as his health declined, all sorts of unsavory characters tried to profit off his goodwill.
Everyone around him isn't there because they're trying to help him. They're there because they want another payday.
One of these people was Nelson E. Boone Jr., who had previously gotten in trouble for selling unregistered securities and later pleaded guilty to bankruptcy fraud just a year before starting a car company with Ali. Together, they formed Ali Motors and planned to release the Ali 3WC, a reference to the 3-time world champion. Built on the chassis of a Pontiac Fiero, the car would feature a fiberglass body, luxury interior, and a more powerful engine. To generate buzz, they planned to gift the car to celebrities, before leveraging Ali's connections and fame to sell it in the Middle East. But the project never got off the ground. Another character who aimed to cash in on Ali's reputation was his attorney, Richard Hirschfeld. He had dragged Ali through all kinds of shady deals, and even imitated the boxer on the phone to get his way. At one point, Ali even brought Hirschfeld onto Letterman to help defend the business dealings he was being dragged into. Hirschfeld's son had bought a Puma, and Ali was really impressed with the car, which led him to meet Kevin Haynes, Puma's representative in Texas. Before long, Ali was on a plane to Brazil, where he toured the factory, signed autographs, and even performed magic tricks. This time, the plan was to modify the Puma 018, giving it a wider body, rectangular headlights, a luxury interior, and a Porsche drivetrain, before shipping the cars to the Middle East and North Africa. The final touch was branding the car as the Ali Stinger. Shortly after the car was announced, a new shady figure wanted in on the action: Moroccan-born Saudi socialite Mohammed Al Fassi. His wealth came largely from his sister's marriage into the Saudi royal family, which secured him a massive monthly stipend. Al Fassi was known for his extravagant lifestyle, reportedly maintaining an entourage of 170 people, 36 cars, including a limousine just for his personal camera crew, along with a $15 million yacht, 2 Boeing 707 jets, and even his own private zoo. He also insisted everyone call him Prince or Sheikh, even though he had no legitimate claim to such a title. He had pledged to invest $36 million into the Puma deal, enough that the car itself would be called the Puma Al Fassi. Beyond being a touch narcissistic, people in Brazil also thought it sounded like their word for lettuce, alface. This didn't worry the fake prince, and he continued forward with the project. But before long, his lavish facade began to unravel. Despite all his money, Fassi had a hard time making friends, especially in his infamous lime green Beverly Hills mansion. He had spent millions, more than the value of the property itself, to add some questionable features, including nude statues with painted genitals. Some called it Dirty Disneyland, and it certainly drew attention, even appearing in movies like The Jerk.
Remember how much I wanted an all-red billiard room with a giant stuffed camel?
And a song by Ozzy Osbourne's wife.
There was this sheep from Sonic who decided to be terribly naughty.
However, it wasn't long before a fire burned down the mansion in 1981, with neighbors reportedly cheering as it went up in flames. Some thought they had started it, although others theorized it was Fassi trying to avoid paying his ex-wife and sneaking out the valuables as it burned. After that, he relocated to Florida, where he tried a new approach to winning people over, which included giving out Rolexes to all his neighbors. He hired local police as personal security, rented out entire hotels for his entourage, and committed to all kinds of charities, including one for stray cats. But when it came time to pay his millions of dollars in bills, Fassi wasn't quite as charitable. Instead, when one hotel wanted to be paid, he threatened he would instead sue them for $1 billion. On top of that, instead of starting a cat shelter, he was charged with animal cruelty against his own 32 cats. In the end, he didn't pay Puma either, and the deal fell through with just a couple of prototypes being made. Soon after, one single car was commissioned for Brazilian businessmen who wanted the vehicle for his personal collection. Later, Fassi publicly supported Saddam Hussein during the Persian Gulf War, a move that led to him being put on house arrest in Saudi Arabia. Eventually, he relocated to Egypt, where he died at 50 years old from an infected kidney. Ali's attorney, Hirschfeld, didn't fare much better. In 1991, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison and fined nearly $500,000 for conspiracy and tax evasion. In a bizarre attempt to force the judge off the case, Hirschfeld was involved in a plan to have the judge's legs broken and acid thrown on them. Except the real plan was to have law enforcement discover the scheme in the hope that they would be forced to make the judge step down, but it didn't work. After his release, Hirschfeld now faced even more charges and decided to flee the country. A couple years later, he was arrested in Spain, extradited back to the US, and while being transferred for trial, took his own life. Puma, Miura, and many other Brazilian car companies began to decline, struggling without new investments and facing tougher competition after the government lifted restrictions on foreign automakers. Puma had sold its production rights to other countries, including South Africa, which ended up producing a few hundred cars, some decades after Brazil or any other country had stopped producing them. In 2013, Puma resurfaced in Brazil, unveiling the P052, followed by the Puma GT Lumimari in 2017. But despite the reimagined designs, the brand struggled to gain traction. In 2005, 80% of Muhammad Ali's name and image rights were sold for $50 million, with the family trust established to manage the assets, ensuring he and his family would be set for generations to come. After first being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 1984, Ali's condition gradually worsened over time, before he passed away in 2016 at 74 years old. He had lived an incredible life, from a boy in Louisville who had his bike stolen, to becoming the most famous athlete on the planet, even after sacrificing his prime years to stand for his beliefs. Ali, Ford, Malzoni, Fittipaldi, and all kinds of people in the story took incredible risks to leave their mark on the world. They weren't just chasing money or fame either, but their own passions, ideals, and legacies. I really hope everyone watching this video is able to do the same. Chase your own dreams, take risks, and bet on yourself. Just don't threaten a judge with acid, support a war criminal, or anything like that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I had a ton of fun learning about how incredible Brazil is and how much cool car stuff comes out of there. If you have any other stories you'd like to hear, please leave a comment on the video. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. Again, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you have a great day.